We move to the penultimate of the reports for this evening, the report of the Safeguarding Committee. I'm going to call the convener, Adam, to come forward. Adam will have with him Julie Main, Safeguarding Service Officer. Adam is deaf, and if questions come to him that he is not able to lip read, then Julie will assist him in that, and we're more than happy for that to be the case. Convener.
Thank you, Moderator. Adam Dillon, 214. Moderator, this is a more full report in comparison to our previous ones, because I have no intention of coming back tomorrow to deliver any part of my report. But what I'd like to do is, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I think it's important to begin with some of the frustrations that folks may have found in the last few months regarding safeguarding service business. In March, we reduced our workload to critical functions, and that largely mirrored the work of Disclosure Scotland, until the work of Disclosure Scotland stopped processing applications. And then at the beginning of the summer, Disclosure Scotland returned to business as usual, and so too did we. The staff have risen to the challenge of working through those obstacles of working from home, but also maintaining a cohesion that ensured a continually robust service, responding to the speed with which other partner organisations such as Disclosure Scotland were functioning. So therefore, some of the delays that have been had through PVG applications, we are doing the very best that we can to push these as quickly as possible, but we're very much working at the speed that Disclosure Scotland is doing so. I'm exceptionally grateful to the whole team of the Safeguarding Service who are working tirelessly through the restrictions, and we're now at a position where much of what we did pre-pandemic has returned. Another of the significant challenges for us has been training. At the end of January, Noel May went on maternity leave and Roy Mulvaney was appointed to oversee training. That's always a challenge, starting a new job, picking up the way things are done and forging away ahead with the work. And Roy has to be recognised for the work he has done. At the start of lockdown, Roy returned to Crossreach to offer his support there. But when we returned to normal business, the biggest challenge had to be, how do we ensure training continues with current restrictions when much of our training is face-to-face, in-person training? The training subcommittee is convened by my vice-convener, Caroline Deeran. Caroline, with Roy and the rest of the subcommittee, are actively considering returning to training for congregations and doing so online. It is taking time to adapt, but we are in a position to take this forward. So I ask for your patience and watch this space. Roy will be in touch very soon. For the purposes of our assembly today, we only wish to bring some amendments to the Safeguarding Act, Act 16 of 2018. While they may seem minor, they highlight some of the issues that have arisen since the Act was passed 2 years ago. And I wish to touch briefly on some of those areas of change. First, overseas mission work. Oscar, the charity regulator, is very clear about the expectations of charities working overseas in Scotland or elsewhere in the UK. And in May 2018, they say this: where a charity registered in Scotland supports or works closely with overseas partners, we will hold the charity to account over the suitability and the management of that relationship, including its supervision of safeguarding risks. This, for the avoidance of doubt, would include working with churches overseas and mission partners. When the church sends staff or volunteers to provide care and education, for example, to people in countries outside the United Kingdom, there is a responsibility to ensure that individuals have a PVG check when that work, if it were to be done in Scotland, would be considered to be regulated work. Similarly, when workers are recruited from abroad to undertake regulated work in Scotland, the PVG check is required, as are the appropriate police checks, appropriate police checks from the country which that person has been living. If suitable police checks are not available from countries abroad, then consideration should be given to bolstering the recruitment process with appropriate references and other checks. Safe recruitment practices at home and abroad are covered in the Act, which is available on the Church's public website. The Oxfam Scandal of 2018 highlighted the ability of people who posed a risk to children and young women to move freely without appropriate checks being carried out. And even when concerns were raised about an individual, little was done to prevent them from being presented for work in other agencies. We have a responsibility to play our part in tightening up these processes. The message is clear. When we or other organisations fall short in measures for safeguarding and the prevention of abuse, we must humbly learn, change and adapt to protect those who are most vulnerable here in Scotland and wherever our work and responsibility takes us in this world. That's the bottom line. I'd like to speak just a little bit about managing those who pose a risk. To date, risk management in the Church of Scotland has largely focused on individuals who have been convicted of sexual offences against children and or vulnerable adults via covenants of responsibility. Robust measures are in place to manage those individuals. However, research and experience tells us that a number of individuals who have not been convicted of sexual offences, but on the balance of probability, have demonstrated behaviour that may pose a risk in the church community, are more difficult to manage as they do not necessarily fall within the scope of the current Safeguarding Act. For example, when information is known but an investigation has not been undertaken by police due to lack of cooperation from witnesses or lack of credible witnesses. This is also true of individuals who may pose a risk for reasons other than sexual. Serious acts of violence, long-standing offending histories, enduring serious mental health issues, substance misuse issues, etc., or any other reason that has been assessed by a safeguarding professional to be a high-risk situation which requires a risk management plan. These instances are likely to be the exception rather than the norm, but the amendment to the Act will strengthen the Church's capability to effectively manage these situations where a real risk either to the volunteer themselves or the people with whom they work is present. Another example of where the Safeguarding Act needs some tightening up is where an individual has been struck off a regulatory or professional body register. Currently, we can only manage the risk if the individual is convicted. We wish to extend that to allow risk management at the point where a regulatory body has deemed a person unfit for work due to conduct. And finally, a plea, a well-worn plea. Attention to detail is vitally important for a robust safeguarding service that ensures a safe church for all. Over the years, we have been updating our records using SG7 and SG11 forms. It is imperative that the responsibility is taken to audit these forms. They are essential to ensure that there is a check and balance in place to understand who in the church is undertaking regulated work at any given time and that they have been trained appropriately for the role. That responsibility lies with congregations, kirk sessions, and presbyteries. At the present time, the Safeguarding Service has a number of business processes in place to ensure that this information is as accurate as it can be. Beyond safeguarding congregation registers, the only central place with a record of those who have a PVG clearance is the Safeguarding Service. It's important that the audits are continued and that the congregations check with the service to make sure that records are accurate prior to submitting their register to Presbytery for the attestation of records. Safeguarding Service is currently conducting a nationwide audit in preparation for the new Disclosure Bill, and we need to endeavour to eliminate inaccuracies in the registers, and we need congregations to play their part in preventing any significant inaccuracies in local registers. The Safeguarding Service is committed to ensuring a safe church for all. But we all have a part to play in ensuring that this is the case. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your contribution in making sure that our service remains a robust safeguard against harm. Thank you. Moderator, I submit the report and I move the deliverance.
Seconded.
Thank you, Convener. We have notice of two people wanting to speak, and so I will invite them to do so. First of all, Reverend Irvin, number 9 from Edinburgh. I'll ask our tech team to promote Reverend Irvin Stewart to the front. He is there. Now look how snappily that happened this time. We are learning as we go. Stewart, please unmute yourself. You are welcome now to address the Assembly.
Moderator, Stuart Urban, number 008. I put my question in the panellist chat, if that will assist the convener for sake of reading, but it's a very short and simple question regarding section 3.2 of the report in connection to the issues that they identified with information technology and getting that resolved by IT. So a very simple question, just that have the committee been looking at other organisations who have similar issues with IT to learn, or likewise in this new era where we have become reliant and much more conversant with IT, case in point this Assembly, have we been able to move that forward regarding the issues with IT identified in the report?
Thank you, Stuart. Adam is just going to confer with Julie and then he will respond to your question. You're not live, Adam, just one. There we go.
There we go. Thank you for the question. We haven't actually spoken to other organisations, but we're happy to do so.
Thank you, Convener. Now, see, we're cooking on gas now. We've had Stuart, and our next speaker is already lined up and good to go. Reverend Goss Carnoustie. Unmute yourself, please, Mike, and name and number.
Thank you, Moderator. Mike Goss, number 520, I think it is. Yes. I wasn't actually asking a question at this point. I was hoping to speak in favour of section 2, which is what I put down in the form, but that's come up obviously at this stage. Yeah. Is that still appropriate for me to speak at this stage?
I think so. I've got nothing else. Yeah, we'll receive the report first of all, Mike. So number 1 is receive the report, and voting is open now. I have a notice from Mr. Paget wanting to speak on number 1, which is, of course, receive the report. So we will hear, first of all, from Mr. Paget, and then, Mike, we will come back to you on number 2. Scott, if you unmute yourself, name and number, we'll hear from you on 1.
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me now? This is Paget 207 here.
Loud and clear.
It's like the Eurovision Song Contest, but no point.
Without the singing.
My question to the convener is, can the convener speak a bit more about the circumstances that would entail a risk assessment would be carried out on an individual who has not been convicted of an event or of an offence? I'm really unsure about the line between being suspicious of people and welcoming people. So who triggers the risk assessment being carried out? Who carries out this risk assessment process? And then what is its outworkings locally? Can the convener speak a bit more about that, because I'm unsure? Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Adam is conferring and will answer your question in a moment.
Just going to check that I heard the question correctly, that Mr. Paget's looking for some clarification as to how we risk assess those that have not been convicted. Is that correct? That's what he's looking for. Thank you. Okay, so something like it's not based. It's based with, we would get reports from other organisations, whether it's a teaching body, whether it's congregations, social work, all these different organisations. If something were to come to us, it comes because it is significant. And when it's significant, it goes to the Recruitment Subcommittee. And the Recruitment Subcommittee is made up of a number of different people. Some of them are members of the Safeguarding Committee, and the rest have been co-opted for their experience in the wider world. So we have folks who represent the legal profession. We have folks who represent the police force, and we have folks who represent social work, as well as psychologists and psychiatrists. And these people will help us to risk assess, because we are absolutely committed in Safeguarding Service, first of all, to ensure that it's a safe church for all, but we are also absolutely committed to making sure that there is a way when we're risk assessing folks, so that if we believe that we can manage those risks, that they may be able to find work or a place in that sort of area. So it's twofold there, but that's where it would come from, and that's how it would be assessed.
Thank you, Convener. I have nothing else in relation to 1. The vote is open. A number of you have already done so. If you didn't earlier, then now is the opportunity to vote on section 1, which is receive the report. Number 1 carries. We move to 2, and as we heard earlier, Reverend Goss is going to speak on 2. Name and number, please.
Thank you, Moderator. 520, Mike Goss. And I want to speak in support of the revisions of the Act, in particular in Section 9, though all of it is vital stuff. In Section 9, we are being reminded of the very serious duty that presbyteries have to make sure that congregations are following through on safeguarding properly. And I think this electronic audit is an essential part of it. And I really hope that presbyteries step up to the mark at the next inspection of records and make sure that the congregations produce their electronic audits and that these are forwarded to the Safeguarding Office timelessly. I think that would be enormously helpful for having confidence in the system at a congregational level, which is probably where the greatest risks are. And I'd be very grateful that presbytery clerks and all members of the presbytery take their responsibilities seriously in this matter. Thank you very much, Moderator.
Thank you, Reverend Goss. I have nothing else on 2, and the vote is open now on number 2. We're just waiting on the vote to refresh in the hall. It has done so now. I declare number 2 to carry. Now we have a proposed new section in the name of the Reverend Aaron Stevens. We're going to take this as a new 3. I think you have it on your screens, but for absolute clarity, I will ask the clerk to read out the proposed new section, which we will count as 3.
Yes, a new 3, Moderator. Instruct the committee to work with the Information Technology Department to prioritise the development of a system through which the SG7 and SG11 forms can be submitted electronically to the Safeguarding Department and report progress to the General Assembly of 2021.
Thank you, Clerk. I will invite the Reverend Stevens to speak to his proposed new section. Aaron, name and number, please, and then proceed.
Thank you, Moderator. Aaron Stevens, 695. The intent of my motion is really to support the Safeguarding Department because whenever we've needed them here in Budapest or other people that I know of in Presbytery, we've received excellent support from that department. As we just heard Mike Goss saying, these electronic audits can be a valuable tool, but based on my reading of the Safeguarding report, it appears that there needs to be more input from the IT department to support what Safeguarding is trying to do. In some ways, the wording of this deliverance seems to be preaching to the choir because it's instructing the committee, the Safeguarding Committee to work with the IT department. And I believe that the Safeguarding Committee is already doing what it can. It's my hope that this instruction from the Assembly will be a strong encouragement to the IT department to do everything they can in prioritizing the development of this system. It's just a way to get all of us working together, and in the spirit of much of what the Assembly trustees were saying about, or saying in their report about working smarter, I think that this is along those lines, and that's why I'm making this deliverance. It's in an effort for us to support a department that offers so much support to us.
Thank you, Aaron. It is seconded. I have a point of order, and as commissioners will know, when there is a point of order brought to us, then we deal with that immediately. It's in the name of the Reverend Irvin. Stuart, you are there. Name and number, please. Unmute and bring your point of order.
Irvin 008. I'm not sure if it's a point of order or just check in with this, but if we bring this, should the GDPR folks not be involved as well, given that these records for safeguarding hold people's details? It's not just a matter for IT, and I suspect that it's the data issue that might hold things up as well.
Thank you, Stuart. I will look for some further advice in this. Convener's going to consult.
Thank you for the question. We are always cognizant of GDPR. We actually, the Safeguarding Service works very closely with GDPR, so we'll continue to do so.
Thank you, Convener. Stuart, I hope you're satisfied with that assurance from the Convener without it going to a new amendment or anything like that. I have. Thank you, Stuart. Now, Aaron Stevens, his proposed new section has been seconded. I just want to clarify with Reverend Kerr, if you want to speak to this, Brian, or was it earlier and you couldn't get in? Can you confirm, please, what you want to speak to?
Moderator, I would like to speak to this new section 3.
Thank you.
Mr. Stevens' name.
Name and number.
It's Kerr 199. Moderator, I would just like to support this, but also have a little bit of a warning to safeguarding on behalf of presbyteries. Presbyteries can sometimes struggle to collect this information in the form that we're being asked for in the report, to gather it electronically or to scan it and email it on. A lot of our safeguarding coordinators do struggle with that, and we are a presbytery that the convener will know tries to do this well, considering that our safeguarding contact is actually his vice convener, who makes sure we do things right at the attestation of records. We go through the documents, we check for any changes, and the paper record is there. To scan them, to store them somewhere, to email them on, leaves us wide open to the point that Mr. Irvin made about GDPR. And we need to be absolutely certain that by the time the next attestation of records come round, we understand the system for presbyteries. We understand that if it's not possible to have this all singing, all dancing, inputted information from coordinators, that we've got the safeguards in place to send these on. At the moment, I don't think we do. And I think there needs to be some thought to that. If we don't get this through IT quickly enough in terms of the attestation of records for next year, or indeed for the end of this year, when forms need to be approved by Kirk Sessions. This is a great motion because it does make sure that this is a priority for the church. But we also have to have an eye on what happens if this doesn't happen, and quite quickly by the end of this year, so presbyteries understand how they're going to transmit this data safely and store it, and what the criteria is for that. So I would urge Assembly to support this motion and urge the Safeguarding Committee to have an eye to that safety.
Thank you, Reverend Kerr. No question as such. I don't think the convener needs to respond at this point. I have a request to speak from Mr. Marquis, number 65 from Livingston. We are still on the proposed amendment in the name of Mr. Stevens. So this would be Mr. Marquis. We're bringing
Thank you,
him.
Moderator.
Name and number, and then please address the Assembly. Thank you.
65, Alistair Marquis. I'm just concerned that we have safe storage of the materials that are sent to presbytery and at local congregational level. I know, as a safeguarding contact person and advisor to my presbytery, that we have lost records at congregational level when safeguarding coordinators have passed away and people have thrown the stuff out or they have just lost it. And presbytery may not hold any records at all from previous years. So we have very great danger of not having a long history of records. So what is going to happen to ensure that both a congregation and a presbytery just doesn't hold the one copy, but in fact has good backup resources so that we don't face the problem we've had with paper resources? We can say, oh, it's okay that it's all going to be held by presbytery and a congregation, but things get lost, machines, laptops break down, and records are lost. What is happening to ensure that we will build up a secure backup system for each congregation and each presbytery? Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Marquis. There definitely was a question in there. Convener, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Moderator. Moderator, the nationwide audit that we are conducting at the moment is addressing these particular issues because we have identified some of those that you have raised. So at the moment, we are working systematically through all the different presbyteries and auditing how well or not so well a presbytery and therefore also congregations are holding registers. So we are working actively on this at the moment.
Thank you, Convener. I have nothing else on this amendment. I want to offer Aaron an opportunity to say something in conclusion, and then I'll go back to the Convener.
Thank you, Moderator. I have nothing more to add except my thanks again for the tremendous work the Safeguarding Committee does.
Thank you, Aaron. Convener, to close this debate.
Be very happy to accept this. I'd be happy also to take advice from the data controller. This has been a long work in progress with IT, It's been over a year, it's nearly 2 years now, so we would be delighted if we could reach some satisfactory conclusion.
Thank you, Convener. Adam makes it clear he's happy to accept it. Is the Assembly happy to accept it? We're now voting on the amendment, seconded and in the name of Aaron Stevens. It is open for voting now. Remember, you can always press current live debate to get to the right place. Voting now. The proposed new section carries. And finally, the deliverance as a whole. Can we have the voting open, please? Deliverance as a whole is before you now. You may vote. We're just clarifying that if the vote now before us is this one, I'm looking for a word. I'm being told that the voting on Zoom has crashed, so we will pick it up again. Bear with us. We did predict and warn you that there would be issues along the way, and indeed we have encountered some of these, but you know, by and large, we are getting more and more used to it, and I think you'll agree with that. I'm seeing voting now. I'll have a word in my ear in a moment to confirm that all commissioners are back up. It would appear that votes are coming in. Thank you. It's confirmed that all voting is now possible again. Commissioners are back. So vote please. We're on final part, which is the deliverance as a whole. I declare it to carry, and therefore the report as a whole, the deliverance. Convener, thank you for tonight and for the work of your committee and, of course, the work of the Safeguarding Service. Thank you.